Hello, my name is Lamar, and I'll be giving my persuasive speech on who are the savages in America. Now, in the beginning, there were a group of people from across the ocean who came over, and by the time they got over here, they seen that the land was already occupied. But during this excursion they were out to promote the religion and getting people to convert to Christianity. And when they got to the Americas, they called the native people, or they referred to the native people as savages. And in the back of these people's mind, of these Europeans, they thought it was okay to take, steal, and kill, and as long as they repent, they will be forgiven. And European people sought out under King George III to dehumanize native and indigenous people to the lands of discovery. Now, when the Europeans arrived, they did call the native people savages. And this had continued throughout colonization and the Declaration of Independence. Michael Cord once wrote in Pennstar article, when you say that's not us, or they not us, remember the historic tale of racial savagery. And American history is deeply rooted in violence and oppression. And we see this in today. No matter where you look, you see it on the news, your local cities, statewide. The concept of child beatings isn't an African thing. This was a European system that was put into place to keep enslaved people in line. Professor Stacy Patterson from Morgan State University written how enslaved use violence to discipline enslaved. So when you hear savages, or when you hear people describe they have savage ways, they're typically referencing people of color. Kind of ironic, right? Because people coming over here doing savage things and then projecting that onto the indigenous and native people to the land. I thought that was crazy, right? When the people marched for the equal rights, many white Americans did not want that. They didn't feel okay with it. They didn't feel like people of color was equal to them, not in no way, fashion, or form. And so when these marches happened, they did everything to make sure that they let people of color know that you are not equal. You are 3/5 of a human being. The United States Treasury featured the story Racial Inequality in the United States of America. Now, this explains how racial inequality affects in education, employment, housing, high incarceration rates, many parts of the American life. And we see the pros and cons to how that affects people of color and white Americans, or people who identify as white Americans. From the redlining to the Jim Crow era to just being displaced, sundown towns in southern states of America, and to say that people of color, native people, indigenous people are savages, when history shows us that these people are incapable of being good human beings overall. And white Americans seem to be afraid of that if they lose power in some way or some sort, that what they inflicted on the people of the United States will happen to them. And in reality, that's not in no way, form, or fashion something that Native people would even want to consider. When in reality, people just want to be equal and be left alone.